Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the social media contract over time, which is a longitudinal analysis of terms of use, which we'll be calling TOUs. My name is Kunal Vohra. I just graduated from the University of Georgia with a bachelor's in math and management information systems.
And I'm Katie Ireland, and I work in the libraries. I'm our digital humanities specialist at UGA. And this is a truly interdisciplinary work with Tim Samples, who couldn't be here today, who is an associate professor of legal studies at UGA.
So the motivation behind this project was the rise of prevalence of terms of use. As the world just gets more digital, more of our life is being ruled by these agreements that none of us really read, but we just hit accept to. Every social media platform has a terms of use. In fact, if you're connected to the Wi-Fi today, you have to agree to a terms of service. So it's really universal. And that prompted our research questions, which first, we wanted to look at how these TOUs are changing over time. We wanted to look at it from a linguistic standpoint, and we also wanted to look at it from just a consumer fairness standpoint. Are they getting more adversarial to consumers, or are they getting better? We also wanted to see how these linguistic patterns have adjusted longitudinally and what caused these changes and what are the consequences of these changes. This all led to our project, which really is composed of two big components. First, we developed an original corpus that consists of hundreds of TOUs of several different digital platforms over time, spanning over a few decades. And once we got that corpus, we got some linguistic metrics out of it, and we put it into an RShiny web app so that we could visualize how these TOUs have been changing.
So our work is based also off of a previous study that was looking only at social media applications, and those were all for present day contracts. With those, we looked specifically at word length, so how long the contracts were, as well as a few linguistic differentiators for complexity. Specifically, we looked at the verbal structures of the text, and then we also looked at the noun phrases. What y'all may or may not be able to see here is actually in the gold color. That is in comparison to Jane Austen's collected works, whereas all of the others are either individual social media contracts or those all together. The average is in the teal color, and you can see that they are by far more complex nominally and in terms of the verbal structures. So for this data set, we had 24 different platforms and 348 contracts, just over 3 million words. And as Kunal mentioned earlier, the data set is longitudinal. So our contracts are from 1999 to the present day. And we generated this data set using the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, and then also in some cases, they had archives of these contracts on their different websites, but you can see our list of different platforms here. We're also actually growing our data set and including eBay and a few others. And this is another view of the longitudinal spread of these contracts. And you can see that we started with Google, which is the only contract we had for 1999. Other related studies to this have looked at linguistic complexity, as I mentioned before, very interdisciplinary, and also overlap with different NLP methods and digital humanities methods for text analytics, including the use of RShiny, which Kunal will show you all the app that he built in just a second using those methods. And in addition to that, we also use Python and the tool for the automated analysis of syntactic sophistication and complexity in order to gather our different linguistic metrics. And task is pretty great because it's based off of the grammatical dependence in a sentence rather than on different aspects of the sentence that are often overlapping. So in this sentence that we took from our data set, you retain your rights to your content and includes two dependent nominal phrases of the verb retain. And something that you would probably know intuitively is that as we add in more dependent phrases to the noun phrase in English, it's kind of harder to understand. In many cases, it's much harder to understand. And in these contracts, they're full of those.
So once we got the data from the Wayback Machine, from the Internet Archive, we had tons of TOUs, but they're all quite messy. So our first step in our methods were to clean up these data. We followed the pre-processing NLP pipeline, which includes lowercasing everything, splitting it into sentences, tokenizing. And once that process was complete, we used Task to generate linguistic metrics from our clean data. Once we got those metrics, we put it into R and then used our RShiny app to visualize those metrics to see the changes over time. Some of the metrics that we used were things that measured verbal complexity, noun phrase complexity, and readability scores. We had 9 total metrics that we decided were the best ones to view linguistic complexity with. So this is just a still graph from our RShiny app, and this is all of our platforms and word count over time from 1999 to 2023. Overall, every single app increased in size. So that makes it even less likely that we're going to read these terms of use if they're longer. So I'm going to switch over to our, how do I might need to stop sharing and reshare. All right, so this is our dynamic web app that we created. So right now we can see Google's terms of use over their 25 years of existence, and the statistic that's being displayed is dependence per nominal. This app is completely dynamic, so we can choose platforms from any of our 21 platforms. We can add Discord, which only has a few, because it started in 2020. Their first terms of use. We could add Instagram, we can add LinkedIn, and as we add all of these, their descriptions add in the platform descriptions as well. We can view any of the statistics as well. One specific thing I want to show is we had a hypothesis that as a lot of these digital platforms merge together, as Google acquires YouTube, as Facebook acquires WhatsApp or Instagram, their terms of use will converge. And that actually proved to be accurate. So we can show that. We can add Google and YouTube's onto these, and we can add all of our 9 statistics. And choose a specific year range. And Google acquired YouTube in November of 2006. So we can bring this out to around November 2006. And we can see just visually that there's very little overlap between YouTube statistics and Google statistics in terms of how complex their TOUs are. Now let's do the opposite. Let's go from 2006 to modern day. We'll just do it roughly. And you can see that there's a lot of overlap. That holds true with Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, with Venmo and PayPal, and with most platforms that have had mergers and acquisitions associated with it. So it proved that what we thought was correct. And just a side note, this app is it's a new app that we developed, and it is fully generalizable for any longitudinal data that someone has. If you have longitudinal data with 2 different variables, you can plug it into this app. You might just need to change the title, and then it'll work perfectly. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So some observations. So obviously data privacy is a big concern today. It's popping up in the news more and more every single time, and it's a prominent concern across the world. So it makes sense that these TOUs are getting more dense and detailed because platforms are more worried about how people are using their platforms. However, to me, it was counterintuitive that terms of use are not actually becoming more linguistically complex. There's no pattern that shows that across the board, certain platforms are getting more and more complex. In fact, certain big players in the space, like Facebook and Google, who have kind of been under criticism about their policies, they've actually become less complex. And we think that is a response to the social pressure that they have felt. And lastly, like we just went over, due to mergers and acquisitions, like the ones we mentioned, landmark legislation like the EU GDPR, and big court cases, notably things like Selden versus Airbnb, or Uber had a big case about certain aspects of their arbitration policy and their terms of use. Because of these court cases, there's convergences across the board. These terms of use are getting more and more similar to each other, and I don't really know if that's a good or bad thing. So thank you all, and yeah, read your terms of uses.